Hello everyone, so this will be the video, it's only one video for this unit, which is unit 3.4 of the IB Economics International Economics syllabus, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the learning outcomes that fall under the topic of economic integration. So basically economic integration is sort of any attempt between two countries or more to trade more freely and to sort of integrate their economies a bit more. There are three forms of economic integration that are listed in the IB Economics syllabus. The first is preferential trade agreements. I'll talk about that first. The second is the different types of trading blocks, and it's blocks with a C. There's no K in trading blocks. This is not a typo. And the last form is monetary unions or a monetary union. Let's find out more about each type. So preferential trade agreements, it's very easy to kind of guess what they are from the name. It's basically when countries give preferential access to certain products from certain countries based on the treaties that they sign. These agreements aim to reduce or eliminate tariffs or by other agreements related to trade. It could be to get rid of a quota or an embargo and so on. So basically preferential trade agreements give preferential access to certain products from certain countries by reducing or eliminating tariffs. The United States might sign a PTA, preferential trade agreement, with China that will reduce or eliminate tariffs on cars coming in from China, or maybe get rid of a quota on cars coming in from China. These agreements can be bilateral, meaning they can involve two countries, or multilateral, meaning they involve more than two countries. And these agreements are often negotiated through the World Trade Organization. Okay, so that's the first and sort of the simplest form of economic integration, preferential trade agreements. The second form of economic integration is the creation of something called trading blocks. Now, there are three types of trading blocks you need to be familiar with. The sort of simplest form of trading block is a free trade area, an FTA. Okay, this involves some economic integration. That's why it's the inner circle. That inner circle in red is the FTA. So what is a free trade area? Basically, it's an agreement between countries to eliminate all trade barriers between the members. A very good example is NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. This agreement eliminates all types of trade barriers between the three member countries. Okay? The next level of economic integration, which involves even more economic integration, that's why it's the middle circle, is a customs union. So what is a customs union? Basically, it's a free trade area, so there's no trade barriers between members, plus all the members have a unified trade policy towards non-members. So not only are we going to all be members of this free trade area, we're all going to have the same trade barriers and the trade policy towards the non-members of our customs union. A very good example is the European Union and CARICOM, the Caribbean Community. Okay, so basically we all come together. We have no trade barriers between us, but we all also set the same trade barriers and the same trade policy towards non-members of this customs union. The third type of trading bloc, which involves even more economic integration, so you can see as we're moving from the inner circle to the outer circle, the level of economic integration is increasing. This third type is a common market. Basically, it's a free trade area, so there's no trade barriers between members. There is a unified trade policy towards non-members, so it's also a customs union. And the thing that makes it unique is that there's free movement of capital and labor. So I'm going to get rid of these highlights so you can actually read the text. So basically, a common market has no trade barriers between members, has a unified trade policy or trade barriers towards non-members, and has free movement of capital and labor. A very good example is the European Union. If you are a citizen of Germany, you can pack up and move and find a job in France without there being any problem. There's free movement of labor. There's also free movement of capital. The member countries have no trade barriers, and they all have a unified trade policy towards non-members. That's a common market. So as you can see, as you move from the inner circle to the outer circle, the level of economic integration increases. Now, economic integration has the effect of increasing competition between the producers within the trading bloc. So any producers within this trading bloc will face increased competition. This could be a good thing because it could lead to lower prices for consumers, increased efficiency. It could also allow producers to benefit from economies of scale because they could access larger markets, and therefore this could lower their long-run average costs. It has trade creation effects, which are a good thing, but it also has trade diversion effects, which is a negative consequence. And I'm going to be talking about trade creation and trade diversion a little bit more. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the positive consequences of trading blocks or increased economic integration is trade creation. What is trade creation? Basically, trade creation is when there's a transfer of production from a high-cost producer to a low-cost producer. So you are transferring production from a producer that used to produce at a higher cost, a less efficient producer, to a producer that produces at a lower cost or a more efficient producer. This is a good thing. This is a positive consequence of increased economic integration. So let's have a look. Say, for example, a country enters into a trading bloc with another country. Before it was a member of the trading bloc, it used to purchase this product, whatever this product is, at S World before integration. It used to purchase it at PW1. But now, after integration, because they got rid of the tariffs between them, it purchases at S World after integration. So it purchases the same product at a lower price, PW2. Okay? This is a good thing. Why? Because this leads to, number one, you have this triangle right here. That's the regained world efficiency. And the other gray box here, that's the regained consumer surplus. So this is a trade creation situation. It's a situation where entering into the trading bloc has actually shifted production from a less efficient situation or less efficient producer to a more efficient producer. The domestic quantity demanded now has increased from QD to QD1, from QD1 to QD2, and the domestic quantity supplied has decreased, however, so the domestic producers will not benefit from this because domestic quantity supplied has decreased from QS1 to QS2. So this is a situation of trade creation. Production has transferred from a high-cost producer, which is the domestic producer, to a low-cost producer, which is the producer from this country with which you have just increased the level of economic integration. However, entering into a trading bloc also has trade diversion consequences, so it's not always good. Sometimes there are trade diversion consequences. This is the opposite of trade creation. It's when production is transferred. So trade diversion involves the transfer of production from a low cost or more efficient producer to a high cost or less efficient producer. This is a negative consequence of increased economic integration. Let's assume we are looking at Greece. This is the domestic supply in Greece for some product, say, something that textiles. We'll say textiles. Okay, Greece could import textiles from Thailand this is the supply from Thailand, Thailand, or it could import it from the EU. This is the supply from the EU. Let's assume Greece has not joined the EU yet. That's an assumption we're making. Now, Greece decides to join the EU. Now, because the EU is a common market and Thailand is not a member, all members of this common market have to have the same trade policy towards non-members. So they're going to set a tariff against Thailand. Now, from the perspective of Greece, once you add the tariff it shifts the S-world curve from Thailand, it shifts it above, it shifts it very high up above the supply from the EU. So now it appears that buying textiles from the EU is more expensive, even though it's not that the EU is more efficient, it's just that the tariff artificially raises the price of textiles from Thailand. So what's going to happen here is that Greek importers are more likely to buy textiles from the EU rather than Thailand. And that's a shift of production from low-cost producer, because Thailand is more efficient. Thailand is a low-cost producer of textiles to a high-cost producer, which is the EU. Now, this leads to a loss of world efficiency, which is shaded in gray here, and a loss of consumer surplus, which is that little triangle shaded in blue. Trade diversion, once you enter into a common market and you set tariffs against non-members, this might trick you into believing that it's cheaper to buy certain products from members, even though non-members might be more efficient. So you're actually transferring production from a more efficient producer to a less efficient producer. That's why it's a negative consequence of increased economic integration. The final form of economic integration is a monetary union. The most famous example is the Eurozone, the countries in Europe that use the euro currency and are governed by the European Central Bank, or their monetary policy is governed by the European Central Bank. So what is a monetary union? It's a common market with a common currency and a common central bank. You have to have those three commons. Number one, a common market. All these countries have a common currency and their monetary policy is governed by the same central bank. There are advantages to forming a monetary union. The first is that having the same currency eliminates exchange rate fluctuations, which creates more certainty, so it leads to less uncertainty. At the same time, because this currency is used in a wider geographic region, it leads to more enhanced credibility of the currency. The currency becomes stronger and more credible. This attracts foreign investors. It also leads to improved business confidence. Why? Because there's less of a perceived risk. People will assume that the currency is stable and credible, so there's less of a perceived risk. The fourth advantage, it reduces or eliminates transaction costs. All the costs of switching between exchange rates and so on, these are eliminated, which is a good thing. And it harmonizes price differences between the member countries. Over time, the prices start to converge within member countries. However, there are some disadvantages to having a monetary union. First of all, individual countries, they give up control over interest rates and monetary policy. Once you enter the monetary union and you become governed by a common central bank, you have no control over your interest rates and monetary policy. So the only demand side policy you have control of is your fiscal policy. This could lead to fiscal irresponsibility of some member countries, as we've seen with the Eurozone crisis. The Greek government was overspending while the German government was being very fiscally responsible. So this could lead to fiscal irresponsibility of some member countries and could lead to problems within the monetary union. Also, member countries cannot alter their exchange rates, so they cannot devalue or revalue their exchange rates in order to make their exports more competitive or maybe change the relative prices of imports. And at the beginning, the initial costs of converting all the currencies within the monetary union to that single currency, this initial cost of conversion can be very large. So there are advantages as well as disadvantages to monetary union. By far in the world, this is probably the most increased type of economic integration, and that's the Eurozone. That's the best example of it. I hope you have enjoyed this video and you have found it a little bit useful. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great one.